Hallo, schönen guten Abend, herzlich willkommen im Depot zur Bewährungsprobe Nummer 43, der ersten in diesem Jahr. Es ist ein guter Start ins Jahr mit Cornelia Mittendorfer, die dort schon sitzt, und Seth Weiners, der zweite ist im Bunde im Rahmen dieser Bewährungsprobe. Mein Name ist Johannes Franz Fischak. Ich organisiere dieses lustige Format des Austauschs seit ein paar Jahren und sage vorab immer so ein paar allgemeine Worte. Schön, dass ihr alle da seid. Das ist ein vollgefülltes Depot. Die Neujahrsvorsätze, mehr Kultur und Kunst sich zuzuführen, scheinen noch Wirkung zu zeigen. Weiter so. Genau. Was ist die Bewährungsprobe? Sie ist ein Format, in dem zwei KünstlerInnen ihre Arbeit vorstellen. Dilemma: Es ist keine Ausstellungssituation, es ist meistens nichts vor Ort vorhanden, was man vielleicht gewohnt ist als Künstlerin, darauf zu verweisen. Die Kunst spricht ja meistens für sich. In dem Fall müssen es die Künstlerinnen übernehmen und gewähren uns Einblick in das künstlerische Schaffen. Und es gibt eine Regel: 45 Minuten sind nicht zu überschreiten, darauf achte ich. Genau, und es sind immer zwei, das ist ganz wichtig. Die beiden kennen sich manchmal, meistens eigentlich nicht. Der Rest ist Spontanität. Ganz wichtig bei dem Format ist, dass es Fragen gibt, und das wissen auch die Künstlerinnen, wenn sie es vorstellen, die Möglichkeit zu gewähren, den Austausch zuzulassen. Ich habe gesagt, das ist eine Experimentierstunde. Es ist wirklich möglich, Arbeiten zu zeigen oder über Arbeiten zu reden, die es noch gar nicht in die Welt geschafft haben eigentlich. Also die noch roh sind oder unveröffentlicht oder was auch immer. Also wirklich der Versuch, den Austausch oder auch die Öffentlichkeit, diese Form der Öffentlichkeit zu nutzen, um zu schauen, wie die Arbeit funktioniert. Genau, was ist noch wichtig? Die beiden haben mir vorher gesagt, es ist okay, wenn Fragen spontan gestellt werden. Das heißt, wenn ihr eine Frage habt, könnt ihr gerne einfach kurz aufzeigen oder lossprechen. Warum ich in das Mikro rede, ist, damit die hinteren Reihen ein bisschen besser verstehen, aber auch, es gibt dann einen YouTube-Stream für zu Hause zum Nachschauen, oder manche sind vielleicht sogar zu Hause und schauen von zu Hause aus zu. Und die Leute am Rechner verstehen nur das gesprochene Wort ins Mikro. Wenn ihr eine Frage stellt und nicht wollt, dass das draufkommt, einfach ein Zeichen geben, dann kriegt ihr kein Mikro, wir verstehen euch trotzdem im Raum. Wenn nicht, reiche ich das Mikro später rum. Genau. Habe ich was vergessen? Ich glaube nicht. Na, wie gesagt, es freut mich, dass ihr alle da seid. Wir starten mit Cornelia. Und genau, später vielleicht noch eine grundsätzliche Sache. Seth wird, glaube ich, auf Englisch präsentieren. Versteht gut Deutsch, das heißt, alle Fragen können auch auf Deutsch gestellt werden, und genau, so geht's los. In dem Fall übergebe ich dir das Wort und wünsche uns alles Gute.
Los. Ja. Sofort geht's los und zack. Schönen guten Abend. Also ich freue mich auch über jeden Einzelnen, der gekommen ist. Full House hier ist bemerkenswert. Geht das Mikro? Ich merke irgendwie nichts. Geht's? Ja, okay. Ja, also ich danke auch für dem Johannes für diese besondere Gelegenheit, einmal so über die eigene Arbeit und über die Arbeitsbedingungen nachzudenken, weil man das eigentlich jedenfalls öffentlich kaum mal tut, sondern also in meinem Fall oft einmal als Hindernis irgendwie vielleicht erlebt. Also ja, vielleicht andere auch. Kurz einmal zu mir. Da bin ich gerade mit einer Performance beschäftigt. Ich bin bildende Künstlerin, arbeite spartenübergreifend, medienübergreifend seit circa 30 Jahren. bin aber auch Juristin. Das heißt, ich habe meine Brötchen als Juristin verdient. Ich bin als Juristin Öffentlichrechtlerin gewesen, also Verfassungsrecht, also im Wesentlichen sozusagen, wie organisiert man einen Staat, wie organisiert man eine Gesellschaft und nicht, wie macht man einen Vertrag. Und von dem her kommen auch viele meiner Interessenschwerpunkte an gesellschaftlichen Verhältnissen, Zuständen und so weiter. Das bedeutet natürlich auch, also als Künstlerin bin ich Autodidaktin. Ich habe erst, obwohl ich eigentlich immer Kunst machen wollte, hat sich das halt biografisch so ergeben, dass ich dann geglaubt habe, ich muss zuerst Jus studieren, um mich und andere besser verteidigen zu können. Und wie ich dann sozusagen halbwegs damit also angekommen war, habe ich ja, also unbedingt einfach anfangen müssen, habe mir aber nicht mehr zugetraut, also noch ein zweites Studium neben der Arbeit zu schaffen. Ja. Was natürlich auch heißt, dass ich also sehr lange Zeit immer beides gemacht habe und sicher irgendwie zur Strukturiertheit meiner Person und meiner Arbeit und meiner Herangehensweise viel beigetragen hat, weil ich es anders einfach nicht schaffen hätte können. Ich glaube, also ich hätte einfach nicht beides realisieren können irgendwie, wenn ich nicht in gewisser Weise auch sehr diszipliniert gewesen wäre und eben mir auch Strukturen gefunden hätte. Arbeiten tue ich, also ich bin nicht in einer Ateliergemeinschaft, ich arbeite zu Hause, aber auch viel unterwegs. Das hat sich natürlich auch irgendwie aus dem juristischen, jetzt bin ich schon weiter, ergeben, dass ich natürlich in den Freizeiten halt dann ja, auch mehr Möglichkeiten hatte. Ja, vielleicht als Einstieg auch gleich einmal also über diese Arbeit Greenline werde ich dann ein bisschen mehr über meine Herangehensweise sprechen. Das ist eine Arbeit also am Beispiel von Zypern über einen der ungelösten Konflikte, die es noch immer auch in Europa gibt. Eine Fototextarbeit. Das ist einen Vergleich anstellen, Zeichnung, Text, Sound, über das werde ich dann auch kurz sprechen. Und das ist der Lehrstuhl für Käthe Leichter, eine sozusagen, also ich habe einen Lehrstuhl gebaut, eine Installation, eine Fotoarbeit und eine Recherche, die dann in diese Soft Materials Arbeit übersetzt worden ist. Und das ist ein Videostil. Ja, und das Juristische hat sicher auch irgendwie zu dem Prinzip der Doppelung in meiner Arbeit beigetragen, das sich glaube ich, auf vielen Ebenen findet. Also ich mache einfach irgendwie nie nur eins, so wie ich sozusagen gearbeitet und studiert habe und gearbeitet und dann mit der Kunst angefangen, gibt es sozusagen immer dieses Spannungsfeld vom Analytischen und dem Poetischen und dem Gegensätze verbinden. Ich habe zum Beispiel beruflich auch sehr gerne moderiert, weil ich gern also Gegensätze irgendwie zusammengebracht habe oder in Diskussion gebracht habe. Und das findet sich auch in meiner künstlerischen Arbeit, denke ich, wieder. Das alles ist natürlich überhaupt nicht gut also passt nicht in das Fördersystem. Weder vom Ansatz her mit dem Spartenübergreifenden, weil die Kasteln sozusagen, wo man sich bewirbt, halt doch relativ getrennt sind. Von der nicht-linearen Biografie her, weil doch sehr viel nach sozusagen Akademie und diesen Curricula gefragt wird, die ich so nicht habe. Und letztlich dann auch das Alter, weil ich natürlich auch später angefangen habe und sozusagen die künstlerische Biografie eben nicht mit 20 oder wann begonnen hat. Ja, also das zu den Arbeitsbedingungen, gerne fragen, wie ich es dann mache. Also ich komme noch später darauf zurück. Zuerst einmal da waren wir vorher schon, über diese Greenline-Arbeit. Das ist eine fotografische Arbeit über sozusagen die Folgen des Konflikts in Zypern, das ja noch immer geteilt ist. Greenline ist die Bezeichnung für diese Pufferzone, die angeblich, weil der General Young damals keinen anderen Stift sozusagen zur Hand hatte, auf der Karten, also mehr oder weniger willkürlich eingetragen hat, darum heißt das angeblich Greenline. Wieso mache ich so eine Arbeit? Ich denke, weil das sehr viel zu tun hat, einerseits also mit meiner juristischen Arbeit auch in der ethnischen Diskriminierung, das heißt, dass ich doch eine gewisse besondere Sensibilität hatte für so einen ethnisch-religiös aufgeladenen Konflikt, der natürlich auch sehr viele geopolitische andere Machtfaktoren im Hintergrund hat. Begonnen habe ich mehr oder weniger zufällig durch einen Besuch bei einer Freundin, die in Zypern gelebt hat zu dem Zeitpunkt und wo ich dann recherchiert habe, ob es irgendwie was Interessantes darüber gibt und bin eigentlich nur auf sehr polemisches, journalistisches Material gestoßen und habe eigentlich künstlerisch nicht wirklich etwas Interessantes damals gefunden und habe mir gedacht, naja, nachdem ich also viel schon mit Erinnerung und Wahrnehmung mich beschäftigt habe, könnte ich ja mal schauen, ob ich irgendwas zusammenbringe. Das ist natürlich auch in dieser Unbestimmtheit kann man nicht ein Projekt schreiben, weil man noch gar nicht weiß, was das werden kann und wie man das auch nur irgendwie bewältigen kann. Jetzt komme ich zu diesem Bild, das Blubbern vor der Idee. Das ist also generell eigentlich ein bisschen meine Herangehensweise, sehr sozusagen in den Ort einmal hineinhören und schauen, was ich vorfinde, und dann sozusagen in verschiedenen Durchgängen die Fragen formulieren, wieder verifizieren, indem man weiter recherchiert, bis man dann sozusagen zu einer einigermaßen geschärften Vorstellung kommt, was die Fragestellung ist. Weil sich das, also gerade an dem Beispiel von Zypern zum Beispiel, sehr, sehr stark verändert hat im Laufe der Recherche. Ich habe insgesamt 4,5 Jahre daran gearbeitet und bin nach einem Jahr Recherche und sehr viel Lesen und dem Versuch auch Beziehungen aufzubauen, das erste Mal hingefahren zum Fotografieren. Man muss wissen, dass Zypern, ich meine jetzt noch immer eigentlich in einem Waffenstillstand ist, wo die Informationen der einen über die andere Seite sozusagen sehr schwer zugänglich sind, also objektive Informationen auf jeden Fall. Und die Uneindeutigkeit von Situationen zum Teil auch Gegenstand der Politik ist. Das heißt, es ist ungemein schwierig, an relevante Informationen heranzukommen. Es gibt zum Beispiel auch keine Landkarten, die von den Ortsbezeichnungen her im Norden und im Süden kompatibel sind mit der Literatur. Das heißt, ich lese zum Beispiel auf Englisch Untersuchungen über das, wo passiert ist, finde aber keine Landkarte, die mir im Norden die Orte wirklich zeigt. Das heißt, ich brauche auch Personen aus der Bevölkerung, die möglicherweise Bescheid wissen und mich führen. Also sozusagen jemand, mit dem man herumfährt, braucht man sowieso auch, weil man nicht alles sozusagen vom Aufsuchen, vom Fotografieren, vom Protokollieren, also alles selber machen kann. Ja. Im Norden war aber zum Beispiel auch das Problem dann, also dass man schon auch mit dem Geheimdienst zu tun hat. Und ich dann als Juristin in diesem Fall auch diese Arbeit sozusagen mit Genehmigungen machen wollte, weil ich dachte, dass das auch besser die Situation vor Ort abbildet, die Schwierigkeiten, die die Leute haben. Im Norden zum Beispiel gibt es sehr viele türkische Militärsperrgebiete, die aber auf keiner Karte verzeichnet sind. Das heißt, ich bin dann also unterwegs mit langen Listen über Orte, die ich aufsuchen möchte, kann die aber nicht betreten, weil türkisches Militärsperrgebiet. Okay, ich wollte aber auch keine geraubten Bilder machen. Ich wollte auch sozusagen die Sprachregelungen respektieren, also dass man nicht sagt Grenze, sondern de facto Grenze oder was auch immer, weil es eben Waffenstillstand ist und nicht eine Friedenssituation und so weiter. Also sich in diesem Feld zu bewegen, da hat es mir sicher sehr geholfen, dass ich Juristin war und ein bisschen besser Bescheid wusste, um Fettnäpfchen zu vermeiden. In dem Fall zum Beispiel, da hatte ich mich, glaube ich, 2 Jahre lang bemüht, beim zyprischen Innen- und Verteidigungsministerium, ich weiß nicht, ob ich das jetzt richtig sage, aber um eine Genehmigung, die Grenzübergänge in Nikosia von der zyprischen Seite aus zu fotografieren, weil ich mir gedacht habe, das ist signifikant im Stadtbild. Treffe also nach 2 Jahren, oder das kriege ich diese Genehmigung, treffe einen Offizier und der sagt, nein. Und dann habe ich gesagt, okay, also ich bin hier nicht auf Urlaub, was machen wir jetzt? Dann hat er mir vorgeschlagen, als Ausweg, er führt mich innerhalb der Pufferzone, also Green Line, so in zerschossenen Gebäuden, dass wir vom türkischen Militär nicht gesehen werden und daher vermutlich auch nicht attackiert werden. Und das ist zum Beispiel ein Bild davon, wobei, so wie in Zypern überhaupt sozusagen der Blick sehr abhängt davon, was erfahrbar ist, was aufzufinden ist, aber auch was sozusagen was kontrolliert wird im Blick. Also wie ich mit dem Offizier gegangen bin zum Beispiel, hat er mir ganz genau gesagt, welche Wand ich nicht fotografieren darf, weil für mich zwar nicht nachvollziehbar irgendwelche Sandsäcke dort, was nicht gefährlich sind, wenn man die sieht. Ja. Das sind, also Porträts habe ich auch gemacht oder beziehungsweise Personen fotografiert. Das sind Flips aus dem Buch. Die Herrschaften, da sieht man es rechts, unscharf, ja. Das wollte ich schon, genau, vielleicht in Umlauf geben. Ich habe mich bei dem Buch dann für Bild-Text-Kombinationen entschieden, weil gerade bei dieser Arbeit ich der Meinung war, dass sozusagen das Bild allein einfach nicht genügt, ja? Dass man sozusagen das in einen Sinnzusammenhang stellen muss, um den Personen, aber auch sozusagen dem Konflikt und dem Geschehen gerecht zu werden. Also bei der Arbeit hat mir wirklich sehr beschäftigt, sozusagen, wie kann man auch traumatisierte, also wie kann man überhaupt über Trauma arbeiten, wie kann man mit Menschen, die traumatisiert sind, arbeiten, wie kann man sie fotografieren, wie gibt man ihre Geschichten wieder. Für mich war eine gewisse Distanz das Passende und natürlich immer nur also mit ihrem Einverständnis und indem man eben vorher auch eine Vertrauenssituation aufbaut, was manchmal schnell geht, manchmal auch nicht gelungen ist, muss ich sagen. Und man natürlich dann die Geschichten von allen im Ohr hat, die zum Teil sehr widersprüchlich sind, weil sie natürlich ihre Geschichte erzählen, die zum Teil natürlich sehr, ja, eben ihr Erleben wiedergeben. Und mit diesen Geschichten im Ohr sozusagen ich natürlich auch Orte zum Fotografieren gesucht habe. Ich habe die ganze Projektarbeit daran ohne Finanzierung gemacht, also ohne künstlerische Projektfinanzierung. Wie ich schon gesagt habe am Anfang, weil das noch so unklar war, was das überhaupt werden kann. Später hat sich dann aber herausgestellt, dass das letztlich mir sicher geholfen hat, sozusagen diese Äquidistanz zu beiden Seiten wirklich halten zu können und das Vertrauen eben auch auf beiden Seiten einigermaßen aufbauen zu können. Das heißt, letztlich muss ich sagen, also ich glaube nicht, dass ich diese Arbeit hätte machen können in der Form, wenn ich von einer Seite bezahlt gewesen wäre. Was, glaube ich, besonders ausschlaggebend auch war, also ich zeige diese Fotos jetzt nicht, von den Committees on Missing Persons, das sind die anthropologischen Labors, wo als einzige Institution in Zypern Menschen aus dem Norden und dem Süden zusammen in den Labors arbeiten und die Ausgrabungen aus den Massengräbern identifizieren, damit sie dann ihren Familien zurückgegeben werden können und also dass die Familien abschließen können damit. um dort fotografieren zu können, habe ich gebraucht die Genehmigung von Nordzypern, Südzypern und der UNO einstimmig. Die kriegt man fast nie. Also sozusagen, ich glaube, dass ich das gekriegt habe, weil sozusagen meine Herangehensweise so war, weil ich mich als Juristin auch ungefähr gewusst habe, wie ich mich bewegen soll und wie ich argumentieren soll oder was ich alles vermeiden soll. Ja. Das ist ein Foto von einer Frau, also da habe ich eine Genehmigung vom türkischen Militär gebraucht, um diese Dame, die alleine im türkischen Militärsperrgebiet lebt, besuchen zu können. Eine Österreicherin, die ja. Und ich denke, dass man doch diesen Kontext wissen muss, um dieses Bild einordnen zu können. Also so wie die anderen Bilder auch. Und insofern ist es in dem Buch sozusagen eine Art Essay mit zum Teil schon Erklärungen, aber zum Teil natürlich auch mit Brüchen, wodurch sozusagen so ein Resonanzraum entsteht, mit den ganzen Widersprüchen, die dieser Konflikt eben hat. Ja. Dann komme ich zu einer ganz anderen Arbeit, wo es auch um Räume geht. Eine Ausstellungsansicht aus dem Basement. Das ist diese Arbeit, einen Vergleich anstellen, wo ich Räume, also ich habe begonnen mit diesen Zeichnungen auf einer wüstenhaften Insel, wo einfach irgendwie nichts, es war so nichts, dass es nichts zum Zeichnen gab, außer irgendwie dieser Vorstellung von diesem Flirren in diesem Ort und wo ich dann begonnen habe, immer mit dem Atem Linien zu ziehen, wie das schon vorher auf dem Foto zu sehen war. Und dann habe ich die Arbeit fortgeführt auf einer anderen Insel, wo mir immer diese eine Insel eingefallen ist. Und jetzt kommt das nicht multimediale Ding. Nein, nicht. Wieso ist das schon wieder weg? Da sozusagen flüstere ich die ganzen Ortsnamen von dieser vulkanischen Insel, sozusagen die gesamte Toponymie, um mir sozusagen die eine Insel auf der anderen vorzustellen. Verschränkt mit dem Ton, also von den Vögeln und so weiter, also von diesen Umgebungsgeräuschen von der anderen Insel. Und insofern, und es gibt auch noch einen poetischen Text dazu, der liegt da hinten, sozusagen vermische ich irgendwie oder verblende ich diesen imaginären Raum von der einen Insel mit dem zwar auch erinnerten, aber sozusagen doch also wie soll ich sagen, näher erlebten von der anderen Insel. Und das ist eine Ausstellungssituation im Basement, wo dann die Judith Neuenhäuserer mit ihren Glasbohrkernen aus der Antarktis auch dabei war und einem Video von, was hat sie da gezeigt? Und jedenfalls haben wir sozusagen den Sound von der Antarktis mit dem auch noch einmal verschnitten und sozusagen den Raum bespielt damit. Das war eine sehr schöne Erfahrung. Und da habe ich dann auch noch im Raum auf der Wand weitergezeichnet, sozusagen, was ich da noch erinnere und höre, wobei das immer, also die Linien auch beeinflusst werden von dem, was ich vor Ort natürlich höre, weil das immer irgendwie in die Körperbewegung hineingeht. Und wir haben uns dann auch noch verbreitert über das Horizontale und das Horizontale in der Kunst. Und interessant ist, seit ich Arabisch lerne und auch schreibe, sozusagen kann ich diese Zeichnungen irgendwie in beiden Richtungen ausführen. Also das hat sich verändert im Verhältnis zum Anfang, wo ich noch nicht Arabisch habe schreiben können in die andere Richtung. War für mich auch irgendwie interessant. Wie viel Zeit habe ich noch ein bisschen? Ja, immer ein Atemzug. Na, ein- und ausatmen. Wobei eher, ich habe es probiert, auch in Mosambik habe ich es einmal probiert mit Ein- und Ausatmen mit Aquarell. Ich bin dann irgendwie, ich weiß nicht, ich war dann glücklicher mit den Stiften. Und mit eher, also jedenfalls kürzer einatmen, tief einatmen und dann langsam ausatmen. Also wie eine Yoga-Übung eigentlich, ja. Ich springe jetzt noch einmal zurück sozusagen zu meinen Arbeitsbedingungen mit diesem immer zwei Ebenen. Ich denke, dass das auch sehr beeinflusst hat, dass ich eine gewisse Neigung habe zur Reduktion, zur Konzentration, weil ich einfach auch nie so viel Zeit oder Raum hatte. Und irgendwann, es ist schwer zu sagen im Nachhinein, sozusagen, ist man immer schon so gewesen oder hat sich das auch durch die Bedingungen so gebildet? Ich neige eher dazu, dass es sich auch durch die Bedingungen so herausgebildet hat, weil es natürlich dann auch irgendwie möglich ist, weil es dann auch Sinn macht oder weil man auch Sinn drin findet, es so zu tun, nicht anders. Jedenfalls denke ich, dass das auch was Kennzeichnendes ist für mich. Also ich suche sozusagen immer eher einfache Lösungen, auch vom Material her eher etwas, was ich angreifen kann, was ich transportieren kann, was nicht zu schwer ist, was irgendwie mobil ist, was man auch verändern kann. Ja, und so weiter. Die Reduktion, die kommt dann auch bei dem Video, das ich vielleicht ganz zum Schluss noch kurz zeigen kann, auch sehr stark. Da habe ich auch versucht, eigentlich mit fast nichts irgendwas zu machen. Aber jetzt komme ich noch zu einer anderen Arbeit, diesem Lehrstuhl für Käthe Leichter. Das ist eine ganz frühe Sozialwissenschaftlerin, die eigentlich vor den Arbeitslosen in Marienthal begonnen hat mit einer, sozusagen mit einem wissenschaftlichen Ansatz der Partizipation zu arbeiten und also mit einem riesengroßen Frauennetzwerk, das also noch nicht ganz erforscht ist, aber ich habe mit einer Historikerin alle zugänglichen Quellen ausgewertet einmal und wir haben, glaube ich, 150 oder ich weiß nicht jetzt genau, 150 oder 165 Frauen identifiziert. Und ich habe die, nachdem man die Beziehungen von einem Netzwerk untereinander schwer sozusagen abbilden kann, es in einen Index umgesetzt. Also das heißt, das ist eine 5,5 Meter lange Arbeit, jede Frau ein Streifen, an dem, sozusagen in dem Buch, das ich gemacht habe, kann man nachvollziehen, die Zuordnung von Namen zu Stoffstreifen, wobei ich wieder auf mein Netzwerk zurückgegriffen habe, um das überhaupt zu beschaffen. Also so viele unterschiedliche Stoffstreifen, die irgendwie zusammen verarbeitbar sind, ist ja auch gar nicht so leicht. Und da sitzt die Geraldine Forbes, eine amerikanische Historikerin, die über Feminismus in Indien forscht und damals GT Leichter Gastprofessorin war und die ich gebeten habe, eine Lecture-Performance zu machen. Und die sitzt da gerade und beschäftigt sich mit diesem Index. Und der Lehrstuhl ist überzogen mit der Originalausgabe, ihrem Handbuch der Frauenarbeit aus 1930. Also ich habe den Tisch gebaut, das damit überzogen und dann ist es noch mit Wachs überzogen, damit es ein bisschen geschützt ist. Und eine Fotoarbeit gibt es dann auch noch. Und das war also ausgestellt auch in der Arbeiterkammer selbst, also wobei die ein ordentliches, wie soll ich sagen, natürlich Schwierigkeiten hatten mit meinem Rollenwechsel. Im Jüdischen Museum bei dieser großen Ausstellung über was nicht, für 750 Jahre Universität Wien und auch im Parlament. Was wollte ich jetzt eigentlich noch sagen? Ja, warum mache ich diese Arbeit? Weil ich sozusagen in der Institution, ich habe ja 25 Jahre lang in der Arbeiterkammer gearbeitet, in der Umweltpolitik, war natürlich vertraut sozusagen mit dieser Erinnerungskultur, die in diesem Bereich also eher vorherrschend ist, hat mich wahnsinnig gestört und immer gereizt. Also etwas, man muss doch eine Form finden, wie man anders darüber arbeiten kann, also wie man auch anders erinnern kann. Und ja, also ich denke, also ich war dann sehr froh mit dieser Arbeit, muss ich sagen. Es gibt auch eine Publikation dazu. Das, ja, in der Mitte ist dieser riesenlange Index. Und dann noch ganz kurz eigentlich, weil ich sehe, dass die Zeit schon sehr vorangeschritten ist. Eine Arbeit über Wissens- und Gedächtnisräume in Rom, eine fotografische, die auch also ein Buch geworden ist und auch eine Foto-Text-Kombination, weil Rom für mich so etwas wie eine zweite Heimat war und ich jahrzehntelang mir gedacht habe, um Gottes Willen, was kann man über Rom noch machen? Also ich habe überhaupt gemerkt, dass ich unglaublich lang in Rom nie kreative Ideen hatte, weil diese Übermacht der Geschichte und Bedeutung und Größe und Schönheit und so also einschüchternd ist auf der einen Seite, aber auch so übermächtig ist und sie selber ja auch so unglaublich mit der Vergangenheit beschäftigt sind, dass so wenig Platz, so wenig frische Luft dafür da ist. Ja? Und jetzt habe ich es aber, glaube ich, geschafft, sozusagen mit einem Thema, sozusagen Wissenswelten, Theater des Wissens, Arbeit am Wissen, eine Fotoarbeit zu machen. Das ist der Pasolini als Superman oder als wie nennt er den, Captain America. Übrigens schon ein historisches Foto, weil der Bagger hat schon weggeräumt. Ist eine für mich sehr persönliche Arbeit, sozusagen wie zwischen Dokumentation und Fiktion, ein Streifzug, der auch viele Brüche hat und mir sehr irgendwie sehr am Herzen gelegen ist. Ja, das ist eine Frau, die liest immer auf der Straße. Und das ist auch, also für mich ein ganz besonderes Foto noch in Rom, also es ist eigentlich in Frascati, aber es gehört zu Rom. Das ist der wahrscheinlich, also in Europa sicher der größte Umweltdatenspeicher bei der Europäischen Umweltagentur, dieser Forschungsabteilung, die in Frascati ist. Die Faszination der Räume, also über das habe ich ja noch gar nicht gesprochen, es ist auch schwer in Worte zu fassen eigentlich. Ich meine, natürlich beschäftigen einen die Vorstellungen von dieser Ordnung, von dieser Fragilität, also gerade bei den Bibliotheken, auch in Rom, oder bei dem Umweltdatenspeicher, das auch zu sehen. Ich meine, wenn man 25 Jahre in der Umweltpolitik gearbeitet hat und dann stehe ich sozusagen im Allerheiligsten des Wissens, das sozusagen von überall hereingespielt wird, das war schon einfach auch aufregend. Und auch sehr speziell, dass ich das fotografieren durfte. Also auch Genehmigungen, das hat ewig gedauert und so weiter. Und dann haben es mir aber 3 Wissenschaftler einen ganzen Tag lang zur Seite gestellt, die mir alles gezeigt haben und alle Speicherprobleme sozusagen mit alten Medien und wie sie das nicht überspülen können und wie, das war dann fantastisch. Und in einer anderen Ausstellung musste ich dann diese sozusagen kleinen Holzspeicherplastiken, diese fragilen, dem gegenüberstellen. Also sozusagen das liegt, das ist jetzt am Foto so nicht zu sehen, weil das irgendwie dann viel zu klein wird. Mit diesem Umweltdatenspeicher vom Esrin, also liegt es davor. Diese fragilen Schwemmholzplastiken, die ja sozusagen unmittelbar Informationen der Natur speichern und die ständig zerfallen können, weil sie nur mit diesem Faden, also der ja auch wie eine Zeichnung ist, eigentlich zusammengehalten werden. Und das ist jetzt noch etwas, was sozusagen so in einem Zwischenergebnis in Linz schon zu sehen war, eine Weiterentwicklung von der Green Line, wo ich sozusagen eher in die Richtung gehe, wie kann man diese Erstarrung auflösen, wie kann man sozusagen gedankliche Räume schaffen, wo diese Teilung nicht mehr ist? Oder wie kann man mit Linie, mit Grenze anders umgehen? Bei der Performance beschäftige ich mich sozusagen mit mit dem Messen dieser Green Line, symbolisch natürlich, und wo ich mich dann zum Schluss also total einwickel, bis ich keine Luft mehr kriege, und dann auch wieder befreie daraus. Und dann noch ganz kurz. Das ist auch auf einer Insel, wo es keine Straßen gegeben hat, sondern nur so sozusagen von Steinmauern begrenzte Wege, und wo ich eigentlich mit nichts etwas machen wollte. Und das war allerdings noch bevor diese goldenen Decken, also diese Rescue-Decken sozusagen in den Medien so aufgetaucht sind mit den Flüchtlingen. Ich kannte das vom Berggehen, wo ich das mit hatte und sozusagen nur mit dem Wind spielen wollte, was der Wind mit denen macht. Und halt den Sound aufgenommen habe. Und mit einer winzigen GoPro, also nur mit so, weil ich immer zu Fuß unterwegs war und eigentlich nicht viel tragen wollte. Für mich ist das so ein Spiel mit der Geduld, mit der Reduktion. Zum Teil finde ich auch, dass ziemlich witzige Situationen kommen, aber das wird jetzt zu lang. Ja. Und aus.
Vielen Dank.
Fragen.
Vielen Dank, Cornelia, genau.
Ja.
Fragen mit oder ohne Mikro? Gerne mit Mikro. Gibt es mir ein Zeichen? Es können allerhand Fragen gestellt werden. Ich stelle die erste, das ist eine technische Frage.
Ja.
Zu der Greenline-Arbeit, du hast gesagt, du hast Fotos gemacht, ist es Analogfotografie, digital, ist dir das überhaupt wichtig, wie die Fotos entstanden sind und, ganz kurz, und hast du die Arbeit selber auch, oder anders als das Buch, das Resultat sozusagen auch vor Ort gezeigt? Wäre dir das ein Anliegen gewesen oder nicht?
Das ist mein großes Anliegen. Also ich konnte es zeigen in einem privaten Museum in Nikosia, direkt an der Green Line. Das war sozusagen ein toller Ort genau dafür. Und noch dazu sozusagen sowas wie in einer White Box in einem Museumsraum, der sich so mit Malereien von englischen Reisenden in Zypern irgendwie, also und Geschichte von Zypern beschäftigt hat. Also es hat total gepasst. Ja, das war ziemlich toll. Ich fotografiere analog, weil für mich diese Langsamkeit mir sehr hilft bei der Konzentration. Für mich entstehen die Fotos ganz anders dadurch. Ich habe mit einer Mittelformatkamera fotografiert, was heißt Stativ, vor allem in den Innenräumen, also auch ohne Blitz, also mit zum Teil Langzeitbelichtungen, was ziemlich mühsam ist. Und auch die Arbeit in Rom habe ich also mit der Mittelformatkamera gemacht. Ja. Fürchterliche Probleme mit Kodak-Filmen gehabt, weil dann in der Hälfte der Filme fast ein Produktionsfehler war, sodass Kodak sozusagen auf den Kadern erschienen ist und die Zahlen schrecklich. Ja.
Ja, ich habe eine Frage, beziehungsweise ich habe einen Kommentar und eine Frage.
Ja.
Vielen Dank für die Präsentation. Und ich fand den Begriff des Wissensspeichers recht schön und ich finde, dass ich glaube, Sie haben ihn für eine der Arbeiten verwendet, aber ich fand ihn auch sehr treffend für viele der anderen Arbeiten, weil es ja immer um ein bestimmtes Wissen geht, das jetzt in diesen Objekten einerseits, in Materialitäten, in Texturen verortbar ist und dann aber auch in den Landschaften. Also bei den Fotografien von Zypern zum Beispiel geht es ja auch darum, dass diese Landschaften und diese Architekturen als Wissensspeicher von etwas fungieren, von Konflikten, die sich dazu getragen haben, also im schlimmsten Fall die Massengräber, wo eben Überreste von den Getöteten noch auffindbar sind, aber es sind immer Wissensspeicher, die sich an den jeweiligen Orten befinden. Also das fand ich sehr zutreffend in all den Arbeiten. Und ja.
Ja, danke, super. Ja.
Nein, und dann habe ich eine Frage zur letzten Arbeit, weil Sie gesagt haben, da waren diese Holzobjekte dabei.
Ja.
Und da haben Sie aber nicht gesagt, ob die jetzt von Ihnen waren oder ob die zufällig dort waren oder wie Sie sie gefunden haben.
Diese kleinen.
Da hätte ich noch gern mehr darüber gewusst.
Die habe ich schon vor 20 Jahren, als man mit dem Fluggepäck noch nicht so streng war, einmal aus Karpathos mitgebracht. Da habe ich die halt dort gesammelt und irgendwie so gelegt und dann habe ich mir gedacht, na, irgendwie ist nichts Gescheites, aber immer im Lager aufgehoben und jetzt habe ich dann diese kleinen Skulpturen draus gemacht. Weil für mich das reizvoll war, auch sozusagen diese total gegenwärtige Technologie mit diesen sozusagen Naturwissensspeichern in Beziehung zu setzen. Ja. So wie ich überhaupt eine Tendenz habe, immer sozusagen nicht nur die Fotografie an der Wand und fertig, sondern ich weiß nicht, immer irgendwie anders noch in den Raum zu gehen oder was anderes damit zu machen.
Ein bis zwei Fragen gehen sich noch aus.
also ich weiß nicht, ob es eine Frage ist oder eine Anmerkung, aber ich musste denken an diese Verbindung zwischen dieser juristischen Arbeit und künstlerischer Arbeit, und wir eigentlich viel von einem Projekt haben, was sehr Fotoreportage-mäßig, aber irgendwie die sind befreit von diesem Zwang, eine Fotoreportage zu machen. Nicht Zwang, wie sagt man auf Deutsch, dass man was reportieren muss. Und so, ich musste denken, vielleicht dann, weiß nicht, so ein Mapping oder so, sowas wie, Mapping wäre das Wort dafür. Ja. Also zwischen dieser legale, dieser juristische Aspekt von dieser Wissenschaft und dann Arbeit, die auch nicht, also wie du hast gesagt, so dein Job ist ein Ding und künstlerische Praxis ist ein andere, aber trotzdem, es gibt schon so eine starke Verbindung zwischen die zwei.
Ja, ich glaube auch, dass es eine starke Verbindung gibt, aber für mich sind diese Fotoarbeiten schon eher Essays und nicht, also Reportage verstehe ich ganz anders. Ja. Und sozusagen ein Motiv für diese Zypernarbeit war auch, dass mich das so angewidert hat, was ich gesehen habe, sozusagen, dass ich eben ganz was anderes als Reportage machen wollte. Aber natürlich mit dem sozusagen, was an realen, wie soll ich sagen, Zeugen der Geschehnisse da ist, ja.
Du bist ja qua deiner Biografie Expertin der Juristerei und der Kunst, also für mich sozusagen eine Koryphäe. Ich kenne sonst niemanden. Wie würdest du das beantworten oder vielleicht beschreiben eher, das Möglichkeitsfeld der Kunst im Kontext der Juristerei, weil du ja sozusagen das auch gemacht hast, praktisch, aber eben das auch stark einfließt in deine künstlerische Praxis. Was hat die Art und Weise, wie du diese Kunst machst, eine andere Möglichkeit, diese Themen, die du ja thematisierst und die wir uns ja sozusagen auch aussetzen, anders rüberzubringen, zu verbalisieren oder visualisieren, im Gegensatz zum Recht eigentlich. Das ist ja sozusagen scheinbar, weil der Konflikt ist immer noch vorhanden und ungelöst und tendenziell eher schwer lösbar. Was uns sagen da jetzt kurz die Möglichkeiten der Kunst, die dich vielleicht interessieren? Oder
in Bezug auf die Zypernarbeit oder überhaupt auf... Ja. Oder
grundsätzlich vielleicht, wenn du es sagen kannst.
Grundsätzlich. Also ich denke sozusagen, aus dem Juristischen kommt sicher eine Sprachgenauigkeit, also dass ich ja auch mit Sprache arbeite und mit Texten und diese Präzision. Sozusagen, das ist sicher etwas, was irgendwie über das Handwerk des juristischen Arbeitens und weil ich noch dazu im Juristischen auch sehr sozusagen analytisch aus dem Verfassungsrecht aktiv und geübt war. Das ist das eine. Das andere ist aber, dass man sozusagen für Nichtjuristen vielleicht nicht so einleuchtend, aber auch in der Juristerei ziemlich viel Fantasie braucht, vor allem wenn man wenn man rechtspolitisch denkt und rechtsphilosophisch denkt. Das ist nicht so weit auseinander und für mich war das eigentlich nie so ein großer Unterschied. Also natürlich sozusagen, man hat unterschiedliche Instrumentarien, mit denen man agiert, aber der Untersuchungsgegenstand ist das Leben. Das ist das Gleiche. Ja, man nähert sich aus unterschiedlichen Feldern. Ich habe in der Kunst natürlich eine größere Freiheit sozusagen des Themensetzens, des auch ein Ende findens, des Kombinierens, Assoziierens und dadurch sozusagen auch durch dieses Ineinanderverwebens neue Kontexte schaffen können, evozieren können. Da bin ich in der Juristerei mehr gebunden. Das ist klar, aber es ist nicht so ein Riesen, finde ich. Ja. Also für mich war es nie so ein unversöhnlicher oder so wahnsinnig weit auseinanderliegend. Ja.
Danke. Wir machen Schluss.
Ja.
Schluss für 5 bis Maximum 10 Minuten. Kurze Info zur Bar. Es gibt Selbstbedienungsbar im Depot, das heißt, mit einer freiwilligen Spende gerne in das Töpfchen werfen, aber es gibt Getränke dort vorne. search and find your seats, please. Okay, wir machen weiter. I'm going to switch into English. Next to me, this is Seth Weiners. Hi, Seth.
Hi.
Seth is going to talk in English, and as I said before, you can ask your questions spontaneously or later. And yeah, I think that's it. Go on.
Okay. Hi. How's this with the mic? Is it fine? So what I wanted to do is maybe start with a few kind of general topics about my work that I think are sort of relevant. Johannes, before doing the talk, gave a sort of, not really a list of questions, maybe just a pair of them. And a couple of them I think they're really good in sort of trying to understand maybe what the work is about. And I think I maybe would loop around to those at the end of the talk because I think they're worth dealing with. And I wrote some answers that I think are probably more succinct than I could do sort of on the spot, but I'm not sure I'll use all of them. So one of the things sort of to start with is it's always really hard for me to kind of sum up my practice into some really tight sort of compartmentalization. So when I talk to certain friends, they say my work is, I wrote a couple of things. So one friend told me they thought my work was about narrative, not really a friend, a partner, Claudia here. The other about relationships, Papa in the back. And then another friend off stage said they thought my work was about doing weird shit in space. Juicy. And I like that one, even though, of course, it makes it seem maybe a little lighter than it always is. One of the things that I've also been talking about a lot with students, is I'm also teaching quite a bit, is this sort of break in thinking about art problems, social problems, and political problems. And I have a feeling that mostly my work deals with art problems. It maybe flirts with social problems and probably never touches political problems as much as I would like it to. I'm not sure it has that sort of agency in terms of being able to affect change on the world's policy, these sorts of things. I also had this conversation with my brother Brandon about the social and spiritual utility of art, sort of asking, why do you do this? What is this for? And I have a feeling on a very basic level for me, it's a way for me to express things that are sort of beyond or between myself, right? I also think it's really like a kind of dumb thing where it is this sort of fear of being forgotten and a desire to be remembered while you're alive still. But I also then thought on the way here that it's maybe this echo chamber or a discussion with reality, but I think discussion is maybe the wrong word. It's maybe more of an argument with reality. So I'm here playing with the world, and you kind of want something to give you some feedback to let you know you sort of exist and you're here. Another thing that's informed my practice in, I would say, a much bigger way than I would have liked it to, is that I started having problems with my hands when I was in my early 20s. And so the reason I'm sort of backing this up with all of this background is partially because of Johannes's questions. I've never given a talk where I've talked about so much of the kind of background. It's normally just a bit more project oriented, so it was really interesting to have to actually think about those things a little longer. And so if anyone who knows me well knows that my hands are a big issue and they're a huge part of my life and the problems with them, and that it's kind of always this sort of battle. So when they started giving out on me when I was, young, I was in my early 20s, I was trained as a painter. I really identified as a painter. I only understood the world through my hands, right? So I didn't think about things. I sort of used my hands to think, right? And then all of a sudden I couldn't use them in the way. I couldn't sort of experiment with them. I had to think first and then use my hands later. And so this really was something that kind of changed my practice into something that was much more conceptual, much more structured. Language all of a sudden took on an incredible role for me. And I think that's also this aspect of teaching for me is sort of been a very practical thing, as well as a sort of emotional and philosophical thing, is that I don't have to use my hands when I teach. So, you know, if you are doing art and you can kind of piece together other jobs, often you have to make stuff, you have to build stuff, and for me this was out really early on, so I couldn't do that much work, and I had to kind of figure out this way. I always was interested in teaching anyhow, so, and it's a big part of the practice, to sort of say the least. Johannes also was asking sort of how you structure time and your practice, and one of the things is I realized also that I really like working on other people's problems. And for obvious reasons, I think a lot of people do, but I do think that's a part of the teaching where if I'm actually honest about it, it's like, well, it gives me a break from myself and my own problems. I bring, what's up? Yeah, yeah, well, we can, you know, work on them as well. Yeah. So I was thinking that, you know, also this is a sort of thing where I really love teaching. I would do it for free, but unfortunately the rest of the world doesn't traffic in goodwill, so that's how I would say, he asked about how you make money, and so one of the ways in which I have sort of a steady income is through teaching. The ways in which art sort of comes in, I have some years where it's been a little more sort of livable from the art, but I'm never relying just on art for income. It's sort of a combination of teaching, art, and freelance design work and stuff. So one of the things that I didn't mention sort of in the first slide is that my sort of educational background, which of course really informs things. So I studied drawing and painting, so I studied fine art, then I studied experimental sound, and then I studied architecture. So all three of those things are a big part of the practice, and as a result of this, I'm sort of transdisciplinary and don't really have a home a lot of the time. It's like I'm not an architect, so I don't fit in with the architects. With sort of sound and music, I'm not coming at it from a sort of traditional way of music, although the music could be considered that. I think the way that it's framed because the fine artwork is not working. And then in terms of, the architecture, it's like, I never intended to be an architect when I went to architecture school. I was interested in the politics of space, and I felt like going to art school maybe wasn't the best place to deal with that so directly, so I went to architecture school. It was also very practical because of my hands. So it seemed like, oh, if I learn how to draw, I can delegate some of that built work, and it was a kind of, like, it was a pretty pragmatic decision along with the sort of, you know, things about it. Also, stop me if I'm talking too fast, and please ask me questions along the way. I don't mind being stopped. I probably could be stopped a little bit. Okay, so the reason I sort of backed this up with the architectural thing is that when I was in architecture school, I didn't know about this before, was this whole mode of paper architecture. So paper architecture, if anyone doesn't know, it's basically this sort of speculative form of space making and architecture where people are coming up with batshit crazy ideas that are taking over entire cities, and they have a scale that, let's say in art, you would never really take on, you know? You're dealing with the corner of a room versus in architecture school to take over the whole city, right? And so it's a really different sense of scale. And for me, this was like one of the most liberating things, but also to see the paper architecture aspect where it was this kind of conceptual art of architecture, right? You don't have to make the work. You can just think about it and somehow represent it. So for me, this became a very, I think, like probably one of the most potent tools I've taken with me from architecture school is this idea of probably working with kind of paper architecture or these sort of imaginary spaces. In the bio for the talk, Johannes took this clip from my bio that talked about that I deal with both actual and imagined spatial environments, and I think that's a pretty accurate way to sort of talk about some of the work, or it's a good elevator pitch somehow. Okay, what else with this? Yeah, so I'll show some work basically that I think is dealing with this, and the first project I want to show is something that I did while I was still in architecture school, and was really this moment, I think, of me kind of establishing what my art practice became that came out of this. If it's boring, Al, just tell me to speed it up. Yeah. So then the next aspect of it is the sound. So to bring this together, I think I started working with sound sort of probably around the time my hands gave out. So it was a combination of, you know, making music, painting, working on the computer. All these things sort of created problems. It was basically, I overworked my hands at a young age and just kind of fucked them up. And yeah, they haven't ever healed. And so it's always, they're never going to be okay, but it's always about managing them. So sound for me has sort of been this thing that I can use that I feel like is this sort of extension of touch to some degree because, you know, it's vibrations basically. And it's this other way of sort of creating space where you don't have to use material, right? So all of a sudden I can play something, I can press a button and I can fill a space, which for me is this really specifically beneficial relationship to basically minimum input, sort of maximum amounts of space making, right? And so I think also what I like about it is in working in my studio on sound a lot is that every day I can create a new space, right? Where if I was working with material, it would be very difficult. You'd have to get it in, move it out. But with sound, you can kind of cycle through it. You can overlay spaces. So it already has this, I would say, kind of imaginary spatial quality, right? Because you are inserting it into another condition and it does something there. So Klaus there wrote this beautiful line about this. My Sadie Siegel is the name I use for music. It's the name of my great-grandmother. And partially, yeah. So what she wrote was working between exhibition contexts, discrete sculptures in the format of albums. Siegel-Weiner draws from a history of site-specific art to create affect-specific situations. And I really like this because then on the more sculptural side of work, I'm dealing a lot with the history of site-specific art. Why are you laughing, Klaus? Okay. Oh, cool. And so, yeah, and so I like that she wrote about it as affect-specific situations. I've never heard that term before, and so it was exciting. It felt like she'd coined a new genre in that. And also, it was 10 years in the making, waiting for the text, so it was very much welcomed. So, okay. And then the other question sort of about the work that I do is often this aspect of sort of, is it rare or is it free, right? So in some senses I've sort of worked in these site-specific situations where it's about a kind of rarefied experience. So you go there, it's only there, you can't experience it elsewhere. It's about a bodily presence, it's about a spatial presence. But then on the other hand, I've sort of rejected that in a number of ways, doing a lot of work on the web, doing a lot of sound work, making objects often that are smaller and discrete and just giving them away in exhibitions. So not really dealing with these things that can't be touched. Like very rarely, if ever, do I make something that can't be touched. So even the sculptures and the installations, they're always something that I'm generally welcoming people to touch and walk through, and you know, they're semi-functional sometimes. The sound work is probably a little different because it's maybe a little bit more of a one-sided sort of touching, let's say. That sounded really bad, but so yeah. And I think that's kind of something about, I would say also, like, I want to say it's a political attitude, that I don't want to make sort of rarefied things that are sort of entombed in a museum, that I'm interested in the way things circulate and that they shouldn't be precious. But on the other hand, it's probably just a form of laziness where I don't really want to deal with sort of art as a commodity, or let's say the spectacle of the market. I think it's kind of a combination of both, and probably sort of the work that I want to do and get most excited about, which I do like rarefied things. I like looking at them. I'm very much invested in this. But I think when I try to make them, it often doesn't make sense. So I like the idea that art can be touched, it can be taken, it can be ruined, it can be shared. Oftentimes I'm not signaling that something can be taken or used. It's trying to sort of build those, let's say, build permission into the form of an object or into the, let's say, the scenario of the work. Okay. I'm a Jew, and this is something that I feel like I'm saying because of a specific project, but also it's something after being in Austria for 10 years, it's important for me to maybe put out there a little more, sort of more directly, because it's something that, you know, I wrote it here, it's different here in Europe to be a Jew. So to come from the US, like, I'm not dealing with tripping stones on the way to other things. I'm not dealing with the Holocaust in a really direct way. Here, it's something that you're confronted with all the time. It was something on my mind before moving here, of course. Like, I was hesitant about sort of participating in a culture that had the sort of genocide of Jews as part of their history. But also I come from another culture that has a number of genocides behind its history. And I have to say, being here, it's also something where I probably experienced much more anti-Semitism in the US, actually, in ways, not in any dramatic ways, but it was something growing up. Like, you know, you're made fun of for being a Jew. You're ashamed to be a Jew, which I think is common wherever you're a Jew, just to be sort of ashamed of it. And it's maybe part of the culture as well, of how it's sort of dealt with. So this is something where I wrote this thing as part of a project proposal where it was just, it kind of was a cross-section of that, of maybe some of that, maybe some of the ambivalence or some of the things around this, where I had to explain to my son when he was 6 what the Holocaust was. And this was a really hard conversation to have, and it basically turned into something where it was very easy to demonstrate, because within a block I was just like, right here with the tripping stones, like, so it wasn't this really abstraction. It was like, these are gravestones, you know. And he asked also, and he was like, kids also, and he said, yes, and you have to go through this whole thing. And he's half Austrian, right? And he's really only a quarter Jewish, half Jewish. And so he asked, when does Austria get to stop being guilty? And to me, this was like this kind of main question around what does that mean and how do you deal with it? And I was like, I have no idea, but it's a great question, right? And I think that is probably one of the main questions, like, when do you actually start to work through this? And can you work through this, right? So some of the work that's sort of come about now is like I finally have started to maybe deal with this a little more within my own work, and to think about it and make it more foregrounded, and to also put it out there as like it's not a breakable topic. It's not such a fragile topic, let's say, or I would think it's important to make sure you can talk about it openly, and it's not something that should be sort of hidden. So basically I started working on this collective project called the Palette von Medien, which is about reclaiming this sort of narrative in this building that was lost in the Shoah, that's in the 3rd district. And so it was basically a Jewish family that ran a publishing house, and what we've done is we've created this, along with Bernard Garnischnig, we've created this sort of immaterial institution, which I would say it somehow has sort of turned into this accidental memorial. We never expected it to become that, but it started to become something more. And the project is ultimately, I would say, about experimenting, let's say, with the materiality of remembrance to some degree, and looking at these different layers of occupation that take place, right, and how they function. Because we're artistically occupying the name of this building. We don't have keys to the building, but everything on the internet points to us. So it's like anything you look for around the Palette von Medien, you get our sort of artistic projects, because there was no one claiming it. You know, they were all dead. So it's sort of this question of also occupation. Can we occupy the name of this building? Can we occupy the publishing house and sort of try to reclaim it? And yes, because no one is grabbing it, but then on the other hand, I would say there's definitely a lot of conflict around that, and probably also for myself asking questions around this. Anyway, the Palette von Medien is a really long conversation. I have to present it next week, so I thought I would spend more time on my own work this week, and probably just, you know, browse through that a little bit. But it's a heavy sort of collective project that really deserves its own talk in a way. So that's why I didn't want to, like, I want to touch on it and say that it's a part of my practice, but, and a big part of my practice, but that it's something, takes a little more space. Okay, questions before I go into any work or comments? Yeah. No, it's real. It's real. It's real, but we have no permission. So we occupy it very easy. Maybe it's a complicated thing because, I don't know, Klaus, you're saying it's not complicated. Do you want to explain it? Damn it. So maybe one way to talk about it is, you know, we occupy a building, but we don't have keys to the building, right? It's a physical building. Yeah, we're digitally squatting a building. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, we don't have keys. We don't have access. Nothing. No. It's owned by the Generale, Monica. If you have contacts at the Generale, we would very much welcome you corresponding with them and asking for permission. I think it would change the project a lot, and that's always this conversation where immediately when I started, so I started as artistic director in 2018. The artist Bernard Garnischnig, who had started in 2014, he had a pretty different agenda than, but, you know, had been researching around it, and then when I came in, I was really dealing more or less with the Jewish history and these sorts of things. But no, I think, yeah, what I was gonna say is that whenever I tell people at the beginning, they're like, well, don't you want the building? You know, aren't you gonna try and get like, you know, restitution and get the building? And we were like, no, we have no interest in the material. We're interested in the story. We want to reattach the story to the building because it's been pulled apart, it's been lost. So it's, you know, you ask this question of the sort of materiality of collective processes. And I would say, sorry to like spoiler alert of the other slides, but so one of the things about the materiality of what we're doing is like we're dealing with two very fragile types of materiality. One is memory, which is incredibly fragile and fickle, right? And then we're dealing with data, right? Which is also super fragile. Like we have no idea how long we'll last in this way. And how I started in a way was Bernard asked me to do a project for the Palais, and I told him I wanted a 100-year commitment on their website. And I was like, if you did a monument outside of a museum and it was made from stone, you could guarantee 100 years without a question. But like on the web, and he was like, shit, this is, I don't know, you know. And then we talked about it, and he's like, it's a good question. And it kind of led to a lot about the sort of sustainability of a project like this. And so now the city of Vienna actually bought a copy of the Palais, which is its website. And so they're archiving it, but they can guarantee us about 10 years of, so we worked with a restorer, and this was super interesting because they'd never bought a website before. So it was hard for, I mean, it's 2020, you know, 22, crazy that they hadn't, but it was still this thing where they didn't quite know how to archive it or how to keep it preserved. And so the person we worked with, Alma Chilling, was amazing, and it was a lot of questions about how, yeah, like how long. And she was like, I can foolproof it for about 10 years. She's like, but when I'm gone, I don't know, you know? So it's like, so then you realize like you're dealing with individuals all the time. And like, so it's not that stable. It's really fragile, even though the political aspect of the project, reclaim the narrative, inscribe it into some institutional, you know, caretaking situation in hopes that it doesn't get lost again, right? But then it's kind of like, well, the materiality is what would probably just kind of crumble, like, you know, it's like fray apart at some point, or you just won't be able to open it. And then you'll be like, okay, there it goes. So we should just print the whole thing out on paper, and then that would be good. Sorry, does that answer your question? Okay, shit, I feel like this is about to be about the Palais, right? Okay, I'm gonna jump from the Palais if that's okay. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to show was a really, really old project called Practicing a Broken Ceiling. This is from 2009. Like I said, I made this when I was in architecture school still in Los Angeles. This is, I would say, something where I was really kind of figuring out what my artistic practice was, coming off of my hands, giving out, not having a studio space, not having money, not having access to shows, not being part of an art school mafia that sort of like, you know, plugs you into specific shows. I was in architecture school, so anytime I talked to artists, they'd be like, you're not an artist, you know? You're like, okay, I know, but I'm still gonna make stuff. So it was kind of like being outside and in between disciplines. So my response to that was, I think, to basically say, okay, if we traffic in images, and we're only as good as our documentation and our images, why don't I just work from documentation backwards? Why don't I start with the document that I want? Like, why don't I find the sculpture I want to make, and then figure out what the story is then? So I basically was sort of reverse engineering artworks. So this whole site is kind of a combination of, let's say, fictional works and real works, and it's kind of massive. Like, it's got a lot of projects on it, and there's some really stupid ones and some okay ones. And they're all like kind of one-liner jokes. Like this one, I said, I bought a piece of tape from Barnett Newman, like on eBay, I bought a piece of tape that had been used to mask out a Barnett Newman painting, and then I made, you know, an installation with it, right? So these were like really dumb young, I was in my early 20s when I made these, so bear with me. Another one that I made that I wanted to show a couple of these and like revisit them a little, because I also realized the work that I started doing recently is really now kind of coming back to this. And there was a freedom there and a kind of wildness where I didn't give a shit. I was just like on my own, making what I wanted to make and sort of going through these weird thought experiments. And I think now it's sort of like I want to somehow I feel like I'm getting old, and I feel like I need to sort of revisit my sort of youth. somehow. So this one was something where I was totally in love with Terrell and the light and space artists, and this was something I was trying to figure out, and so basically my response was I bought a shitty keychain at the gas station and decided to make a 67-hour-long cloud, and so I basically did this light installation for only as long as the battery would last in this keychain, and was really into this sort of weird thing of how do I erase a corner of a space. So I was in architecture school as well, so I was like, how do I erase architecture? Like, how do I start to do this? And so the response was like, well, I can use light to try, how does it look? Oh, you can't see anything there. Well, oh God, you can't see it up there. Sorry, I'm looking at this and I was like, yeah, it's not bad, it looks okay. But it looks terrible. So basically you have these keychains that have lights on them, right? Light, a keychain, what is it, a Schluss? Yeah, and these tiny ones with a battery, right? And so then I only left it on I left the work on until the battery ran out, right? So 67 hours. I was saying that I made a cloud for 67 hours. Really dumb idea. But
The cloud you made as well, or the cloud was already there?
the cloud was the light. It's just light. That's just light from it. Shit, you can't see it. Can we dim the lights? Is that possible? Do you mind? Do you mind if I dim the lights? Is that okay? Yeah, now you can kind of see it. Where it's like, the idea was like you point just the right amount of light into a corner and you make the room pretty much dark. You can get it to feel as if the corner erases. What? No. Yeah, he looked at this site, Hosky. It was like, oh my God, woof. So I'm showing this because I was totally in love with his work and I was trying to figure a way out of it. And I think probably my way out of it was to start to come up with these sort of more narrativized aspects of the work. Are you fine with the lights off, or is this too intimate for everybody? Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to show that one really quick. Maybe here you can see it a little more. So like at certain points in the life of it, it would start to kind of break up, right, and became this sort of cloudy thing. But it was also this moment of realizing how much documentation, right? Like I think up to that point I hadn't really used documentation as a sort of tool for constructing work. And I think that's what it sort of became for me. Okay, one more quick one from here. So, yeah, and the way I talked about this at the time was also that these were sort of Google ready-made performances. So, at the time I was, the Google search engine had gotten quite amazing at that moment. And so then you started realizing like, well, everything's already been made before. It's already out here. Now we're at another peak of this. But I think that was, at the time, it was like, well, what can you make that you can't find on the internet, right? So I was like, well, why don't I just find images on the internet and then figure out images next to them and sort of stories. So this is one where basically a friend had brought to my attention that there was a small leak that was beginning to mutate the ceiling of her grandparents' living room. And basically what had happened is she had painted on the ceiling just obsessively, just over and over and over, right? So probably about 30 years. And it ended up being about 7 inches thick, which I don't know, what is that in centimeters? That's probably like 10 centimeters. And since the ceiling hadn't cracked, basically they had this water leak, and it hadn't actually cracked yet. So you had this weird kind of pimple. So I asked them if I could aid the leak until the ceiling burst as a sort of, thing. And I have some sound from this. Let's see, this is probably really loud. Let's see.
I thought she was your friend.
I'm just kidding, Fran! I'm just not used to this. What is that thing?
Oh, it's just my little audio recorder.
Oh, it is silly looking.
It is. It's pretty, looks like a shaver.
You can sit down.
Well, I'm a little afraid to sit so close to
Oh,
the
we
balls.
sit here all the time.
It's pretty, I thought it would be a lot bigger.
It is bigger. Where'd she go?
I don't know.
Fran?
So wait, above that's the bathroom?
Yep, that's the master bath.
Okay. So that's off of your and Dawn's
Yep.
bedroom. Okay.
Yeah, about half of right where we're sitting, I'd say, is about where the wall is, where the bathroom ends, and then the bedroom starts from there. But this whole part here is the bathroom.
And so you're okay with me aiding the small leak that's there till the point where this thing bursts, and you're fine that if the ceiling isn't, I mean, you're fine the ceiling breaking, basically, right? You know that that's what will be.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just
Is
can't
there that
believe
much
it's
water?
kind
Where's
of
the water?
just, it just sunk like that.
Yeah.
It just sunk.
And this chandelier here doesn't seem to be at all affected by it.
Nope.
Yeah, but that's fine.
But we're taking that down before you go up there, though. You just hold on until we can get that down.
Okay,
'Cause
okay.
We want to save that.
All right. Oh.
That was a gift. When I started noticing it, I thought I needed to cover it up, and painting it was a good solution. It covered it up until it showed through again, and then I'd paint it again, and then I just had to do it.
Yeah, I have some things like that in my life.
As soon as the brown would show again, I'd paint it.
The color has uniform, so the shape at form, it's the color that you want to see uniform.
Yes.
This is Don and Patsy Lou Williams, and this was in Flint, Michigan. And I want to give a shout out, if she's listening on the internet, to Carly Short for her wonderful performance. So yeah, part of that to be, also at the time when I made the site too, so a piece like this, obviously I didn't make this. I hope everyone realizes this. I did find eventually what the ceiling was, but it was this kind of randomly floating image on the internet that I found was just whoa, who made that? What is it? And it turns out there was this type of ceiling that was used in the former Soviet Union called a Barisal flex ceiling. And apparently these had really rubbery things. So this is maybe a real image. It wasn't photoshopped, but I couldn't find anything else beyond that. So then I just thought, when I saw the image, I was like, how did that happen? And then I thought immediately, well, I guess, two old people live there, and I have to ask them if I can turn it into a sculpture somehow. So I wanted to show this stuff because, it segues, and also haven't shown it in a long time. There's a lot of stupid things, stuff about me and Lawrence Weiner, stuff about a Dorito spill casting call, termite drawings. So a lot of them are these kind of practicing a broken ceiling. Yeah, it's totally live and stuff. Although I have to apologize, it's a kind of old site, so it's totally unresponsive. So it's, you see it. It's quite old. So it's practicing a broken ceiling.info. And it's still up. Okay. So that one, I wanted to show that project because I feel like that was sort of way of getting into maybe. At the time I was thinking, how do I start to actually work in this way where I kind of imagine agency? I think I felt like I have no agency in the world. How do I at least allow myself to imagine it? And I think that was probably my response, and also artistically not feeling like I had a place somehow. Okay, so the next one I want to show, if there aren't questions or people want to stop me. Does anyone stop you? Stop the point? Quit? No? Okay. Time also, please keep time someone. I'm not paying attention at all to the time. What time is it?
Minus 10 minutes.
Wait.
8:50.
No shit, really? Okay. We have 10 minutes? Oh, 10 minutes left?
You can talk 10, 15 minutes maximum.
Wow. Okay. Easy. All right, so this one I want to show, and we have another person as part of the project, Antoine Torion. So this is a piece called Shopping Chant, and this is also a sound piece, and it happened in 2020. I'll try and go through it sort of quickly, even though it's sort of a long-winded project. Okay. I'll do it, all right. So then I think what I'll do is I'm going to play the sound first, and maybe level-wise, let's see if this is a problem. Hey, Linda and Andres, tell me if it's too loud, the baby. That one, it's quite a long audio piece. Basically, the general idea was, how do I turn this building into an instrument somehow? So how do I use it as a body of an instrument? And I was sort of asking also, how do I turn songs into sculptures? And so basically what I ended up doing was, I was in this area here. So it's a former mill, sorry to not give it. It's a former flour mill that was decommissioned. Antoine was here, had run this larger project, inviting and commissioning artists to do projects on site. It was also this really beautiful overlapping of teaching and working as an artist, and sort of amazing group of students had come from Linz where we were teaching. And so we worked alongside of these other students and artists basically for a couple of weeks, and the mill was open for tours. And so, but we were only open on the weekends. It was kind of high COVID time, so it was also a pretty limited situation in some ways. And so, yeah, I was in this room here, and so the idea was, can I sort of squeeze the sound out and have it come up through the two grain towers, or the two towers of the building? And I was in this weird room that had these kind of very shallow ceilings, and underneath my room that I was in was, let's see this, there's basically the Grazer Canal, right? Is it the Grazer Canal? What's the name of it? Mulgang. Okay. The Mulgang, and so this place was also collecting power. They had a turbine, and so they were collecting power for the city of Graz and giving it to them. So the piece was run from the turbine-generated electricity, and for me this was a really interesting aspect of it, that somehow the site was generating its own energy. So you see this here, it's kind of coming under, here is the kind of Kraftwerk Großelmühl Graz, we're sort of running it. And there were some times where it didn't work, so we had to figure out a way to plug it into another building, and we were like, I think ideally it'd be something where it only ran when there was power collected, but it was always super hard to be that consequent, because then it was like, well, people are coming and we have these tours and other things. I think pretty rarely we were running off electricity right from the house. So maybe once we had to, because the canal would get overwhelmed. The turbine would get overwhelmed and it would shut off basically this generator. So I got really interested also from this idea of how can I start to then work with this as a kind of topic, where then if I'm doing sound pieces that are electricity heavy, how can they start to become sort of autonomous? And I feel like that's sort of coming now in later work that I'll be dealing with more, is how to make these kind of autonomous things. Yeah, and this one was the first time I'd ever prepared sound before going to a space. Basically, like in the past I had done sound pieces where I would just go and improvise, maybe sort of loose, too long, annoying, whatever. But I think in this I basically made this kind of tighter album throughout the year of songs really, and then had to kind of reverse engineer them to sort of turn them into longer form things. So I'd worked super hard to press them down for album format, and then I had to go back and really extend them into these kind of longer things. The other part of it was trying to somehow score the space, so you see it's really kind of like, it's totally fucked, and like it had all these layers of time when it was an operating mill, then people squatted there, and I didn't clean the room or touch the room at all. My thinking was I just want to add electrical impulses to the space. Like I want to somehow stay out of it physically, but see how much can I change in terms of the perception of the views, of the sort of layers of time and of history through what I was doing with the sound. Yeah. I didn't do any of that. All I did was see these super clean speakers. All I did was bring those in and wire up. I didn't touch anything. We had to move a couple things that were potential like hazards in terms of for egress for people walking through and stuff. Yeah.
But was it like a concert? Did like live action there? Did you mix the music inside?
Yeah, it was a mixture. Well, what happened was I went maybe like a week before it opened. We were there about a week. And so like I'd had these songs prepared. I'd went and what are you doing, Rafi? Oh, okay. Sorry. So one of the things, was that I basically went beforehand. I'd had these tracks. I'd spent like maybe a week and a half working with a mixing and mastering engineer, Chris Yonkin. It was an amazing experience. And he like got them down to 2 channels beautifully. But then I had to all of a sudden take that and pull them out and like, figure it out on site. So basically what I would do is, like what you're hearing is, this is one of the tracks on the album, and then it starts to devolve into kind of field recordings and things I pulled from the site. This one specifically was like, harmonically was in tune with the turbine, so it would drop, and actually the harmonics of it were sort of, it felt like they really belonged together. So I sampled that and pulled that into the sound and had other things coming through. But yeah, I spent a really good amount of time sort of mixing them on site and extending them on site. So I didn't extend them at home. I basically brought the pop track kind of, and then just like, pulled it.
It was open for what kind of time? Like one day, or open to public? And public was like walking around, or?
Walking around. Do you want to explain this, please?
It was only open for guided tours, basically. So private property, and we had like security issues, but the site overall was public, or like publicly accessible, but the mill was part of only accessible to public tours. But what was nice to Seth's piece, you had a song for every day actually.
Yeah, this is my
Friday,
set list.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, I had a different track for each day.
Track for every day.
Yeah.
Which also rhythm the tours basically.
Yeah.
So we started bottom, but then always arrived at Seth's piece at the end.
Yeah, and so you could like also we did it in sort of timing where then it worked a bit like a clock for things, because we would start on the hour with my tracks, and they were each maybe like 30 minutes each day, and then like if that was an hour block, then it would just be silent, like so it played and then be gone, and then when it played again, you knew, oh, it's probably on the hour kind of, and a tour should start sort of, or that was the idea. But yeah, each day was a different, let's say, chant. So Friday was postcard chant, Saturday was the shopping chant, which is this one, Sunday was dogwood chant. Okay. I'm not going to read the text from this because that'll take way too long right now. But how are we on time? Okay. Shit. Which one? Okay, what do you want to see? Which one? You want Luffs or you want paper? I'm going to do paper songs. This one. So this is a good, what? Should I show this one? Yeah, okay. All right, so also there's sound for this one. I'll play that and walk through the images and then talk about it, if that's cool with everybody. So this is sort of a little more up-tempo. So this one is a new one that is all synthetic. So these are all synthesized images. None of these are real images. They're all AI generated images. And so I started playing around with AI stuff and, you know, found for me it's this perfect sort of extension of my sort of Google image binges from before and these sort of Google ready-mades. Now I all of a sudden have the control to sort of construct things in a much more fine-grained way. And it's a wild situation where it's collage at the granular level. If anyone's familiar with the AI, like sort of text-to-image AI. So these are all built with text prompts. So I write in there something like, Yamaha speakers, toothpaste sawed in half, you know, hipsters exuberant in a parking lot in Ohio. You know, and then you start to get these weird confusions where it looks for these things, it can't find them. With bodies, you see, like, you kind of immediately see this weirdness, like, they start to really fuck with the flesh and like get brutal in these ways. So with this one, I really started building out this narrative. The basic idea of this is that I did a residency at Sun Paper, which is a paper manufacturer that was sort of starting to work with this new technology where they were inlaying photovoltaics into paper. And so I asked if I could do a residency. They let me do a residency, and I worked on making speakers that were made of paper. That's why the project's called Paper Songs, that were self-powering, right? So if you look at these here, these are some of the experiments where it's sort of inlaying photovoltaics into paper and then doing these sound installations specifically for this startup company's lunch break. So these are images of their lunch break, and these are my performances, and you can see they loved it. I mean, clearly, they had a wonderful time at these. And so I don't quite have the narrative for this one. This is also I wanted to show it specifically because it's something that's sort of in flux, and I'm trying to figure it out, and like sort of this question of like, where is this? And it's a very weird thing because with Google image search stuff, it always had a place kind of attached to it. It was located. Where with this, it's sort of anywhere. And so, where are you at, Ryan? We had talked about it, and he was like, Youngstown, Ohio, for sure. Like, it was an immediate thing with this image of this kind of exterior building, which I really like, that it's in Youngstown. I'd started first thinking that it was somewhere in Niederösterreich, but then I was like, I don't think I can play it off as being something that happens there. Like, it's maybe got a little bit of this parking lot weirdness vibe that I know from sort of suburban America, maybe more than Austria. But so why I was also wanting to show this one is because then, so I have an album of music now that I'm sort of toying around with the idea of saying, oh, I made it while I was at this residency, and that I then have to kind of make some documentation, which would be like, how would this sound, right? Like, and I definitely have not worked in that space where I sort of like built images of sculptures of speakers and then asked myself, what does that sound like? And so for me, that's getting somewhere, I think, sort of interesting on both on the kind of material and immaterial level, where it's sort of asking AI to do stuff and then trying to learn from it in maybe a way that's a little counterintuitive, right? Yeah. Then the film. Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So yeah, it's like kind of then working around it, and of course you have to have a moment of failure, right? Where like your test doesn't work, it lights on fire, and sort of the solar stuff doesn't work. Okay, I'm done. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Seth, for sound and image.
Yeah, sure.
Also your presentation. Questions. German, English, everything is loud.
Is it your way? Is it your voice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay. There's bits and pieces of Claudia in there and other things, but yeah, it's my singing, yeah. It's my singing, yeah.
You want to keep the music?
I can kill it. I know. Fine. Okay. I get it. I can take a hint. Sure. Yeah, sure.
Other questions?
Sorry, all these photos, the sound speaker?
All of them. Every single one of these is a synthetic image. It is not an image that is real. It's a collage. It's at the granular level of data, of other people's photos, of whatever, but it's a synthetic, it's a synthesis of images. So it's a collage, but it's just at the finest granularity. Yeah, but I mean, you have to spend, you gotta really, I go deep with it. And then, I mean, but you know, it's true though, that in certain things you can get them more coherent. Depending on what you're searching for, like some it really shits out things that are like dum dum dum, and then others it really can't. Sorry. Lou, this is your future. Yeah, like these are totally, you know, this is synthetic, right? So I asked it to make me a painting in the style of Philip Guston, right? What? That's what this is. I asked it, I said, make a painting of something like, you know, loaves or whatever, pink. Fine. Sure.
I just thought about how you open the presentation with the hands, you know, your broken hands.
Yeah.
And then you talk about architecture, and I was just thinking about this never healing wound that you just walk around with, this open wound. And I don't know, and you keep on presenting and stuff, and I was just thinking about how, for me, for example, painting and drawing is in order to express something I cannot do with words.
Yeah.
And how you have this sort of volubile conceptualism, I guess, is how I would define it. And also the music, which actually you never really hear you speak out words, you know?
Yeah.
And how you kind of always, I think, trying to reach at the limit of words.
Yeah.
Which is what I think to me is like an artistic practice in a way, trying to go where you can't really go just with words. And I mean, it's not really a question, it's just sort of a remark or sort of observation. I think that's kind of interesting.
The lyric thing has definitely come up, and like one friend asked, like, oh, it'd be nice to hear words. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, strange, like I can't shut the fuck up in the rest of my life, right? But then when it comes to the music, I'm like at this line of where it's like, I can't, somehow words feel too concrete in music for me, and I sort of lose this space. It's like they lose the openness of it being spatial maybe, and they start to give it a very clear narrative, even though it's pretty melodic and pretty narrative, but it's sort of, yeah. But yeah.
So this is a premiere. There's a first question online, and I'm going to read it. I think it's for you. So everyone careful. And I hope the person who wrote down the question is still there. I don't know that.
Hi.
So.
What? It's an AI chatbot.
No. I wouldn't say the name now. So it's a secret.
Okay.
Maybe later. Question. I was wondering. Hi Seth. Thank you for the talk. I was wondering with the last two pieces if you've ever considered scoring a movie or a spatial dance performance. I would love to see that.
Oh, thanks.
There are so many performative inputs from the factory, and likewise so many cinematic ones in the AI imagery.
Yeah.
This is one question. How are you planning to show the AI works is another one.
Done. It's already here. It's shown. First answer. I think the AI works, showing the AI works is a difficult one, because that's what I ran into with that first website, was like, how do I move out from this sort of screen space into space? And I think it's probably never going to be this, but it's probably learning from it and eventually, you know, finding a way, and it changing the way I think. Like, that might be the easiest answer, is like, showing it is probably just that it's rewiring my brain to some degree, and then it's about enacting that. In terms of scoring dance, that was actually one of the first things I did with sound, was I'd scored this dance piece when I was maybe like 20, 21, a ballet piece. That was really satisfying, and that has, yeah. But it was, it was experimental ballet, LD. So I am sort of interested in, the dance thing, but then I think in some ways I'm very much interested in the sculptural aspect and the installation and it kind of sitting there. In terms of scoring films and stuff, where's Raphael in the back? This is something that we have sort of on the books, and I'm very much interested in that. And it's sort of been used, I guess some of my tracks have been used in like video pieces and other things. So yeah, open to it and interested in it. Thanks for the question.
We have time for one or two more questions. One is, I think for me, I have one question. regarding storytelling, because you were focusing a lot of how the image resolves in a way, and how did the storytelling, your storytelling, change with that? Because like we had your presentation here, so you could make clear that every word comes from you in a way, and there is no interpretation is quite narrow maybe.
Yeah.
Someone who like visits your website or listens to it is totally different for them, that person.
Yeah, and I mean, right now this one is really unresolved, where it's like, all I have for the text now is to the chatbot, please tell me a story about an artist doing a sound residency at a paper company that is trying to make photovoltaic line paper. The story is about the fear of failure, jealousy, and ultimately radical self-acceptance. Tensions emerge halfway through when the team of the company begins to hate the sounds being made and tries to kick out the artist. And then all I have is then what they gave me back, which is a pretty cheesy story, but it kind of maps out your typical story structure. So another one I have that I'm working on is a tighter story that I've written on it. So I think that's a huge part of it, where then that text that will live there, I think I'm very much aware of like, how much do I give, how much do I not give, like what remains open. So one question, like with Klaus, my partner here, Claudia, with this other piece that I was working on, I'd like sort of wrapped it up at the end of the story, and she was like, no, like cut the end, it has to remain open, that the thing failed, like don't say it failed or didn't fail, just say you did it and leave it at that. So it's like also kind of looking at what sort of stories, it's really important. And a big part of it is also this like this kind of cut sheet that's so basic on anything of like, what year was it, where was it, what was the exhibition, what's the format, and I'm trying to call them out where I say it's, speculative. With the material, I list off the materials I want it to be, then I say text to image generations, Photoshop dye, text sound. So I'm also trying to be transparent with that it's, not real. Like also, oh shit, it didn't update, damn, or I forgot something. It wasn't at the Mac. It's a leftover from another piece. And also like the dimensions, how long was it? So all of that is like part of this kind of setting up the story probably, or like giving it a context, right, to live in. And then like, thanking the patient engineers at Suns on Paper, but also Midjourney, chatbot, and OpenAI. So it's like both the real and the fake living together somehow, and, just kind of confused. But I don't know. I mean, this one is like, I wanted to present it tonight to actually work through that and see kind of how it landed and what I would tweak and, based on saying it. Sorry, does that answer your question? Kind of, not really?
Kind of. In comparison to the early work, like with the Google search, which was new for you, it's like a Fortschritt in a way, like I don't know, the progress maybe, but it isn't. But also the way of how you present the work in a way had to progress in the same time. So I wanted to focus a little bit on that kind of like what the difference between early years and nowadays.
I mean, the early ones you see, it's like 3 images, it's like 3 images, 1 sentence, right? I don't give really any of that context of like, this is where it happened. I mean, a little, but it's really minimal. But I didn't know, I hadn't shown, like, I hadn't done real shows. So I was like, well, this is what it would be like, And so then now having done that, it's that, but it's also, I think they're building into bigger pieces. Like clearly this is like 40 images or something. There's a whole album of music, then there's a story. So it's kind of like the worlds are probably expanding versus that early stuff. And so I don't know if does that, okay. Cool, drinks?
It looks like this. I would say the same.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for you both.
Cornelia, thank you as well. Thank you.
Wir haben noch, also es ist noch Zeit, um einen Drink sich zu genehmigen. Wer will, an der Bar. Die beiden KünstlerInnen sind noch vor Ort und gerne auch auskunftsfreudig, glaube ich. Genau, das war's.